Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to Radio Entrepreneurs. My name again is Jeffrey Davis. I'm the host of Radio Entrepreneurs. I'm also chairman of the board, CEO of Mage LLC, management consulting firm in Boston that deals with leadership and family businesses in transition, building for strong growth and for future longevity. I'm so excited. My co-host for this segment is the one and the only Mark Z from Mark Z Legal Staffing. Welcome back, Mark.
Thanks, Jeff. Great to be here always, and always super relevant subjects and very interesting and entertaining guests.
Well, you've gone into your goodie bag, Mark, and you found us an attorney from Washington, D.C., Elliott Alderman of Alderman IP. And welcome, Elliott.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Good. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your practice, your background?
Yeah, essentially, I've been practicing for about 40 years, and most of what I do is transactional and advisory copyright and trademark stuff. I do some appellate litigation. I started out as a litigator. I found that it brought out the worst in me, and I like doing things where everyone is happy after it's done. So most of what I do is kind of shaping how people protect and profit from their intellectual property.
That sounds positive.
Well, that did sound very nice, and not everybody can say that who practices law.
Yeah,
It can be a little more conflictual.
I feel very, very lucky because I think the kind of stuff that I do is largely driven by technology. So the law is never static. So it's constantly changing. It's challenging. I like working with creatives, and it is very satisfying in a way I think a lot of lawyers don't have that experience.
But you have to be, like an old expression, you have to be book smart. You have to read a lot, don't you, to stay up on everything that's going on.
Yeah.
And write too. So you really have a lot of what I would consider to be the classic attorney skills.
Yeah, and the thing, it's interesting because I don't do patent because I don't have a technical background, but I do a lot of technology. And one of my clients, I work with professional sports teams, among others. So I work with a team for a long time as their outside IP counsel, and they would turn off their phone the conference call when we were talking because they would be laughing. And they told me later that they called me Columbo. And I'm always very surprised that attorneys who work with technology don't really understand what they're doing. So probably me with my background as an English major, I have to work doubly hard because I may not understand the technology, but I can ask questions to get there. And I think a lot of lawyers don't ask those questions. And it was always very surprising to me that outside the vendor's counsel who's working with their technology never really understood what it did. So that was an interesting experience. I mean, talking about having to be book smart and current and everything else.
I haven't used that term in a long time, book smart. Mark, do you have a follow-up question?
Yes, so Elliott, as you're working with different clients and focusing on trademark and copyright, and you're working in sports today, as you say, with professional teams, can you tell us maybe some of the challenges that you have? Like one of the things, like Jeff and I have talked about this a few times, a number of sports teams have had to change their names because of political and social pressures and leading from businesses. Have you helped teams get involved in that? Have you, in terms of the process, or what goes into the process?
And I'll jump in on that. And I don't want to offend anybody, but I grew up and I was a huge fan. Maybe my favorite team was Sonny Jurgensen and the Washington Redskins. So I'm showing my age. He was just such a flamboyant player, and I just really had a big thing for the Washington Redskins. And so I still identify with my primary learning when I see a Washington football.
Well, it's interesting that you say that. And again, I know Elliott being in Washington and specializing in this space. There's actually an indigenous group that wants to bring back the Washington Redskins name. So that's interesting because they weren't offended by it. But the whole point that this is becoming a very big area, and there's businesses and society are putting pressures on teams and anything, just in terms of boycotting or social media. And have you got involved in situations like this, Elliott?
No, most of what I do is working with venues, so it's more generalizable than just sports teams. It's any amusement park, casino, campus, etc., and helping them integrate technology and content into their infrastructure. So a lot of, like, I worked on the mobile app for, I can't identify the team, but they're a 3-time NBA champion, and a lot of what they do is to kind of diagram the experience of getting into and getting around the venue. And it doesn't matter whether it's a casino, it's an arena, a stadium, they all have common issues. They have very complicated infrastructures. They have fan or customer facing and then internal, and you bring in vendors for a little piece, and you have to make sure that bringing in for a narrow piece doesn't blow up the entire infrastructure. So if you have something, for example, for ADA compliance for language or something, you can't have that blowing out the air conditioning in a Miami venue. And so essentially what they're doing is diagramming how you get around and then putting that into technology, which is usually a mobile app. So it was fascinating because you don't really think about how difficult the experience is for a fan of going to a venue. And I think generally there's a 2-tiered system where season ticket holders are treated like royalty, and then everyone else has to kind of fend for themselves. And there are things that you would never think about, like getting around if you don't know an arena, because most of them are generally like labyrinths, purchasing things, having the ability to order from your phone, getting it to you, buying merchandise. Like everything is touchless now, particularly after the pandemic. But if you've ever been to a venue, in the old system, and I see it because I was at a Wizards game a couple of months ago. You've got 5 people banging into each other in a booth, trying to check out, people buying a shirt or something like that. Where a much simpler way to do that would be to be able to scan it or purchase on your phone. So that's the whole like commoditization of using technology for jobs where they're not like highly skilled jobs, and it streamlines the experience because people who are paying for a season ticket have special places to eat, special places to park. Their parking may be valet, so they don't have to wait to go in and park it. So it's a transition to, I think, using software and mobile applications and things like that to make the experience better. Because for the people who are not season ticket holders, like I used to get free tickets all the time, and I could not even give them away because people didn't want to have to drive to the facility and then wait for parking and then pay $80 for parking. So so you're trying to conquer that to get people in the seats.
Right. What about you talk about venues and you talk about technology and mobile applications. There's talk about what's going on with Taylor Swift leading this charge against some of the ticketing agencies, and I think she could be the beginning of what other musicians are doing to control ticket sales and problems. So they reach their fans, because if their fans aren't having a good experience, or they're not showing up, or there are other issues, this could become a problem. So I think that it sounds like you're doing a lot of work in this area.
Yeah, that was an issue with one of the teams that I was working with, where there are resale things like StubHub, and they were trying to find technical ways to defeat that, because you would get tickets which were already fairly expensive, and then, depending upon how close it was to playoffs or during playoffs, all of a sudden it was 5 times the face value of the ticket. And obviously that isn't good for the team, because they can't fill the seats that way. So I think that's an issue across venues and for entertainment and sports, and probably I don't know, it's as much an issue with amusement parks. I think Disney's very good at monetizing everything.
Oh yeah.
But
Disney is, one of the best run companies in the world. Elliott, sadly, we've sort of run out of time. I could sit and listen to you all day,
Okay.
and maybe we'll have to just bring you back again.
Sounds good.
From Washington. We'll have to, through the magic of the internet. But Elliott, if someone wants to reach you before then, how would they find you?
My website is www.thecontentlawyer.com. My phone is 202-596-5682, or you can just Google or use whatever search browser you use for my name, Elliott, Elliott, Alderman, Alderman.
Great. And our fabulous Mark Z, who can also point people back towards Elliott. How do people find you, Mr. Z, who found...
First of all, Elliott, thank you for appearing on the show. That interesting topic between the law and the mobile phone and just all the interaction with technology. I think that's a really big subject. As far as for me,
thanks for having me.
Pleasure. As far as for me, it's go to a Radio Entrepreneur's website, radioentrepreneurs.com, markzlegal.com, marczlegal.com. Google Mark Z, MARC, and the letter Z will come right up, and 617-338-1300.
And remind everybody, we're going to continue to stream stories every day, every week, across the full Radio Entrepreneurs platform. And I'll see you next time on Radio Entrepreneurs.